Hi guys, good afternoon, and welcome back once again to the EdWord. I'm your host Eddie, and in today's video I will be doing my episode recap and review for episode 4 of season 5 of Falling Skies, Pope Breaks Bad. Now before I begin, as usual, I must warn you that this episode will be full of massive spoilers regarding the newest episode of Falling Skies. If you are not caught up on season 5, or if you're behind a few episodes, do not watch or listen to this video, as I will be discussing pretty big spoilers, so you have been warned. That being said, damn, it got dark real quick, real fast. So just to give you a quick recap, when Pope and Sarah were out scouting in the last episode, Sarah gets caught in the Ishvini quicksand shit, and she gets caught up half to her waist. So she's not sinking, she's just stuck. But Pope is forced to abandon her to go back to the second mast to get a flamethrower and to get help. And when he tells everybody else that Sarah's trapped, Tom refuses to go to her aid because instead he and everybody else are going on a mission to destroy the Ishveni's source for creating more skitters and black hornets. But Pope insists on getting Sarah first, but Tom tells him we'll get Sarah after we've completed our mission. But Pope's furious at that, of course, but Tom drives away. After the mission's successful, they return to find Pope cradling a dead Sarah in his arms. She was devoured by the miniature black mechanized insects with human eyes. And she's dead, and Pope has now lost the one person he genuinely cared about, and it hurts him bad. So now in this episode, it opens with Pope resurrecting a small little grave for Sarah where she died. It looks like he found an old tombstone, an old headstone of an angel with a missing wing. And for the very first time in the entire series, he has removed his skitter necklace, because the very first time we met him, going way back to season 1, I make it sound like it's a long time, but it kind of is if you think about it. The very first time we see Pope, he, and up till this point in the show, wore this necklace with skitter fingers for a necklace around his neck since the beginning of his time on the show. He finally takes it off and places it on the angel gravestone in honor of Sarah. And also, in one of the very, if not for the very first time, because thinking back, I do not recall Tom ever addressing him by his first name, but this is the first time I've heard him say it, and it's possibly not the first time, but this is one of those rare instances where, Pope is just, so intensely focused on Sarah's gravestone, and Tom's in the background, and you can see Tom in the background. And what I like is how they keep the camera focused on Pope with Tom just in the background. Tom, addresses him as John, because that's his first name, and a lot of us keep forgetting, oh yeah, Pope's just his last name. His first name is John, full name John Pope, but everybody always calls him Pope. Even his girlfriend Sarah called him Pope for a while until they finally became a thing. Towards the end she did refer to him as John and call him John a couple of times before she died. But everybody else always calls him Pope since the beginning of his time on the show. But this is the first time I've ever heard Tom call him Pope. And, he tells him how he's like, you didn't have to resurrect this gravesite by yourself. There are those of us who wanted to pay our respects to Sarah, so you didn't have to do this alone. He can't tell you how sorry I am. And, he's trying to say how sorry he is to Pope, but it's clear that Pope's completely tuning him out, not listening to him at all, just still focusing solely on Sarah's grave marker. And Tom tries to reason with him, saying, people die in war all the time. There's nothing we can really do about that. It happens. And after he says his bit, he walks away, leaving Pope in peace, when Pope slowly turns and, gives him the crazy, I'm gonna kill you look. So things have definitely taken a worse for Pope and Tom's relationship. And of course, they've always had a prickly, complicated relationship. They've either been at each other's throats or they've been forced to work together to save each other on numerous occasions. But they've never really been friends. But they've been, they've just been more like mutual acquaintances who put up with each other. And they have different ways of approaching and handling things, and they've never really truly gotten along or seen eye to eye. And the problem now is that Pope, of course, just flats out blames Tom for Sarah's death, because Tom was the one who refused to go rescue her first and then fill out the mission, but instead he wanted to fulfill the mission and then go back for her, but by the time they got there, it was too late. And so Sarah, like so many other people on the show, became a casualty of this war. And, it was really upsetting to see that, because I was really looking forward to seeing Pope really try to solidify and strengthen the relationships he's made with all the different characters on this show, including Tom, Weaver, Hal, everybody else on this show whom he's always been at odds with. But, finally just, stop acting like such a prick all the time, Pope, and start acting like you're part of the team, but it's just like he's incapable of it. And this is probably one of the sadder episodes of Falling Skies, because, you remember, this is the final season of the show. There's probably not going to be much room left for redemption or re-solidifying past relationships or trying to work things out. It's like, things were called off between them. And so Pope immediately begins rallying followers, building up another gang of berserkers, basically. And this time, Anthony is his right hand, because Anthony is dissatisfied with Tom Mason's leadership and the leadership of the Second Mass overall. Because he's suffering from PTSD, he killed the Overlord while he was in custody. His weapon and his duties have been relieved from him, and he's basically a disgruntled soldier who's struggling with PTSD, and he's the perfect follower for Pope, and Pope more than happily joins him in his inner circle. So now Pope, Anthony, and a couple other survivors, one of the more rugged, beaten down, nasty looking fighters are now joining Pope, and Pope flat out challenges Tom about how everybody, and he lists off all the names of everybody who's died because of Tom. Well, at least that's the argument Pope tries to make, and not every single person who died because of Tom, but a lot of them did die because of decisions that Tom made or had a hand in making. So, Pope brings up all the dead people, and then basically it becomes a shouting match between him and Mason, and Tom's standing there, arguing with him with the Second Mass behind him and then Pope's followers behind him. It's like both sides are literally split. It's like a physical division in the Second Mass, all because of Pope. Well, not just because of Pope, but, a lot of people, it's not just Pope, but several other characters have begun questioning Mason's leadership style. And to top it all off, Cochise is dying. My second favorite character. This episode was hard. It was a great episode, hard to enjoy, though, because two of my favorite characters were having bad shit happen to him. Pope was going down this dark path of destruction, and Cochise was dying. Thank God he survived it, because as he explained to Ann, Tom, and Weaver and Ben, he had concluded his lifespan, as he put it. And basically, he was born with only one liver, where most Volm are born with two livers, but he wasn't for some reason. So his lifespan was significantly shortened. However, Anne convinces his father, the general, to give him one of his livers or kidneys. It was one of those two in exchange to save Cochise's life, to which the general actually agrees. And Cochise, for the very first time in the series, shows emotion. He admits to Anne while she's operating on him how he's come to love and care for the people of the Second Mass, and how he actually really does feel about his father. And his father, I think, in turn felt something too, since he agreed to be a part of the operation to save Cochise's life. And fortunately, Ben and Anne operate on both of them. They remove the general's liver, and then they put it into Cochise. But unfortunately, the general has now shortened his life and basically gave his life to save his son. And the general, the leader of the Volm, is now dead. And this will most likely leave Cochise in charge of the Volm operation, because that's what his father, the general, was. He was the supreme leader of the Volm, and now that responsibility will most likely fall on Cochise, who is alive and well, thank God. But I didn't like seeing his dad go. I felt bad for Cochise. He lost his father now. I did like him opening up to the humans and revealing his true feelings for them and showing emotion for once. With the tears running down his cheeks. poor guy. And then he and Anne have the moment where they have what the Volm referred to as a great silence, where two of them like share each other's thoughts and company. And while Cochise saw his father's image, Anne in turn saw her dead daughter Lexi, and it provided some closure and peace for both of them. Not completely, but it made both of them feel better, especially Cochise since he just lost his dad. And meanwhile, Anthony kind of leads Anne away from the second mass to talk to her, and he brings her to a very disheveled Pope who has now completely shaved off all of his long hair. And he does it in, like, from the way he phrases it, to honor Sarah, because he's like, Sarah was always on me about my hair and how I should shorten it and cut it. I finally did. And obviously the subtext here is that he means to, as Anne blatantly points out, he's going to hurt Tom the way he was hurt by killing his loved one by killing Anne. But Anne is fortunately she's able to talk him out of it. And, she comes to Tom's defense about making tough calls, tough decisions where lots of people's lives are at risk and a lot of them die because of those decisions. And she also inadvertently points out how Tom would actually be a lot more devastated if one of his sons were to die instead of her, because his sons are his legacy. And she points out Pope has no legacy. He has no one to carry on his name or who he was after he's long gone. And so I think that's partially what makes Pope change his mind, is he realizes, oh, wait a minute, if I really want to hurt Mason, I don't hurt his wife, I hurt his sons, the people he really, really cares about, at least one of them. And Anne, unfortunately, kind of lets that slip when she's trying to change Pope's mind about killing her. Oh, and an interesting note, something I forgot to cover in the last video, Cochise reveals when Tom shows him a picture of the aliens that he encountered in his vision, in his dream, the ones that took the form of his dead wife, Rebecca. Cochise reveals that those creatures are called the Dornia, and they are the race of creatures that the Ashveni originally enslaved and mutated and turned them into skitters. And it makes so much sense because they physically look like the Dornia looks like a better looking, much more attractive skitter, where the skitters are deformed, hunched over, ugly looking, smelly, animalistic. But the Dornia are clearly advanced, civilized, and they were the ones who were probably the Ashveni's first victims. Excuse me. They were the ones who were enslaved by the Ashveni and turned into skitters. So now we have an origin story for the skitters and what their species originally was before they became skitters. And when Tom asks them in his vision, because once again they approach him as his wife Rebecca, he's like, are you the great enemy or the great threat the Ashveni talked about? And he's referring to last season when the Ashveni overlord, who was in charge of the prison ghetto camp the second mass was in, when he was trying to go negotiate with Tom, he's like, the Volm are not prepared for the great threat that is coming, it'll soon be here on your planet. And he wouldn't go into specifics, but the Dornia openly admits that, yes, we are the greater threat to the Ashveni, but the Ashveni is the greater threat to you, Tom Mason. And basically, for some reason, they cannot exist in the same space or matter as other life forms. Since the Dornia are technically extinct, these are kind of like their memories of themselves talking to Tom, or perhaps it's just a small band of Dornia who survived extinction. Either way, for some reason they cannot coexist in the same physical space as Tom or any other life form. And then in Rebecca's form, it asks him, where's Hal? Where's Hal? What's happened to Hal? Wasn't he supposed to come home from school? And the Dornia is actually warning Tom that something has happened to Hal, and sure enough, Pope has kidnapped him and taken him. And, nobody really suspected anything since Pope was basically expelled from the second mass, because towards the end of their little shouting fight, Tom says, I'm done. I'm done with you, Pope. I've had it up to here with you. If you don't want to be here anymore, you're more than welcome to leave. You can go ahead and get out. And those of you who agree with him, who don't agree with my leadership, and you think that I've gotten a lot of people killed, go on, get the hell out of here, and you can follow Pope. But now, of course, Pope, who's pretty much gone insane at this point, has left presumably with Anthony and all of his followers, and they're at an off-site location where Pope reveals to a captive Hal of how when his father comes for him, he's going to kill his father, and then he's going to kill Hal. So, it's becoming a pretty desperate situation. Meanwhile, the Second Mass, while Tom goes off on his little rescue mission, the Second Mass carries out their intended mission with going to Norfolk, Virginia, which is supposedly an operational military base just outside of D.C. where a lot of Ashveni activity is happening. In fact, Shaq, good old Shaq is back. The other Volm with a name like Cochise is showing Weaver and Hal earlier in the episode on one of his cool Voltech maps, how there's Ashveni activity increasing all over the world, but in world capitals, DC, Moscow, and a few other places in Europe. So the Ashveni are definitely up to something, and they're all taking place within state capitals, and that's where the Second Mass is now heading, towards DC, to find out what is going on and hopefully take down the Ashveni once and for all, because the Dornia even warns Tom, be ready, for the final battle is coming. So it's exciting stuff, you guys. I have to say, very disappointed as to how the character of Pope is being handled. I've always enjoyed him as a character. He's an interesting, complex guy. But I do feel really bad for him about losing Sarah. I do. And I can certainly understand why he would blame Tom for her loss. But at the same time, like everybody has pointed out, death happens in war. Lots of people die. But Pope's not willing to accept that, since Sarah was basically becoming his entire world. How he had nothing else. He had nobody else except her. And now she's gone. And in the next episode, I gotta be honest with you, I can seriously see Tom killing Pope. Rescuing Hal, killing Pope, perhaps crippling some of Pope's followers, if not scaring them off or convincing them to return to the Second Mass. Shit, maybe he'll even kill Anthony. Maybe Anthony has, too far gone. Maybe Anthony and Pope are both too far gone to come back to the Second Mass and to come back to humanity in general. It's really sad because I really enjoyed those characters. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe something will happen where Pope will snap out of it and he'll decide that he doesn't, he'll have some kind of catharsis or realization where killing Hal will not bring Sarah back, and there's no point in this revenge anymore. Unless something changes where Tom's about to kill Pope, but they're attacked by aliens and they end up saving each other. Who knows? I'm excited for Sunday's episode, and I'll definitely be doing a recap and review for that, so stay tuned for that as soon as that airs. Thank you for tuning in and watching the EdWord as always, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Falling Skies as much as I did. I think it's probably it's one of my favorite episodes, even though bad things happened to two of my favorite characters, Cochise and Pope. But they're both still alive, they're still around, and we actually still have a long way to go before the end of the series. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to subscribe, click, and comment to share this video. Leave your thoughts and opinions down below. What did you think of this episode? What were your favorite moments? What do you think the direction that the show is taking so far? Would you change it? Would you leave it the way it is? Leave your thoughts and opinions down below, guys. I'd love to hear from everybody. And, tune in and stay tuned for my reaction video, which I'll be doing later today, regarding my reaction to Fear the Walking Dead trailer, because I still have yet to do a reaction video for that, so stay tuned for that. And, of course, until next fine. I've been talking too much, see? Until next time, may the Force be with you.